What are the different needs for people in the developing world with Bitcoin?
Yes, I think in the developing world, if you're one of the, 60 some odd percent of people that's living under $3 a day or living on less than $3 a day, I think the prime concern for you is having a unit of account that's not going to degrade, and also having a unit of account that's not volatile. So, as much as we think that long term, when Bitcoin reaches its zenith or the top of its S curve, that it will be very valuable for people in the third world because it will be very stable. It's not quite there at the moment. So there are more proxies used in the third world, for instance, or the developing world, if that's better suits you. Basically, stablecoin issuance is quite high in the developing world, and stablecoin use is quite high in the developing world because these people are getting the meager amount of money that they're being paid to do these really hard jobs that they're working for. I mean, they're selling their whole life away for something that the average American might spend on, a car, like a one-time car purchase. And so when you think about their needs, they're very different than the needs of privileged Westerners. And what they need, I think, is something that day to day is going to be there for them. And I'm going to be honest and say that right now, Bitcoin is not that thing. But we think that in the long term, Bitcoin will be that thing for everybody on Earth, not just privileged Westerners. There are interesting technologies and interesting experiments, like the Lightning Network allows a lot of instant settlement between network participants, and it's very frictionless at a very low cost, especially if you're using a custodial wallet. Like in El Salvador, we see Bitcoin Beach, and obviously the Lightning wallet proliferation there is very interesting. Some people who can afford to, they do get the message, and they are able to save Bitcoin over the long term and deal with the volatility because they know that based on the regime or the government that they're dealing with, that even with the volatility, Bitcoin might be the better bet in the medium to long term.
How does Bitcoin improve financial inclusion?
Yes, I think Bitcoin improves financial inclusion by creating a fair, rules-based system that enshrines property rights for all people. And in fact, Bitcoin makes good on the American promise of treating everybody equally. That was a very high and lofty ideal that Jefferson and the other framers of the Constitution put in. And some have said, and I think rightfully so, that maybe even they themselves didn't believe in it, because these were men from a different time. They had very anti-progressive ideas for how we interoperate with the world. And there was a lot of human bias in the system. And so in order to enshrine rights, property rights for individuals who came to America and became American citizens, there were a lot of parts that fell short. And there are a lot of communities that felt that. And I don't think it's right to shy away from that and act like America was perfect. America was the best idea we had at that time, but it wasn't able to make good on some of the promises that it made. Interestingly enough, Bitcoin follows in this tradition by becoming, the world's new city upon a hill, in a sense. That's what they called America when it was first founded because it promised freedom and equality for all. Bitcoin is now promising freedom, equality, property rights, and a fair, rules-based system for all. And how do we do it? How do we accomplish it? We accomplish it by ridding ourselves to the best of our ability, to the highest degree we can, of human bias. We take human bias out of the system. The nodes in the network are machines. They're computers. They don't know what color skin you are, what religious creed you are, how short, how tall, how ugly, how fat, how beautiful, how rich, how poor. They don't know anything about you. They validate everybody's transactions just the same. And they provide the same inclusive system for every single participant on Earth. That's something like extremely special, extremely beautiful, worth fighting for, and I think why many of us have dedicated our lives to this technology.
What would the world look like without Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think that unfortunately, if there is no Bitcoin, or if Bitcoin didn't exist, or if Bitcoin failed for some reason, we're barreling towards a sort of a dystopia that I don't think any of us are ready for. And it sort of terrifies me. The sweeping authoritarianism and tyrannicism that we've seen, especially post-COVID lockdowns in the Western world, is now matching that of, third world dictators from decades ago. These new technologies, while they enable freedom, the double-edged sword is that they also enable anti-freedom. And that's something that we have to really contend with. CBDC, central bank digital currency, that wasn't a thought in anyone's mind before Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin burst forth onto the world and escape the Pandora's box that Satoshi released it from, it was always inevitable that people were going to use the technology to try and tamp down on freedom. And I think that's what we're seeing with central bank digital currencies. Now, there's a lot of like design heuristics and differences between central bank digital currencies and Bitcoin. And because of these design heuristics, I'm very confident that, over the long term, Bitcoin will win. But I do think we're going to live in a world with both. We're going to live in a world with central bank digital currencies, and we're going to live in a world with Bitcoin, at least for a time period. And on a long enough time scale, it's very hard to think about what will win. But if Bitcoin doesn't win, I'm not bullish on the world that we're going to leave our children, and that saddens me. Because if you think about back to what I said at the beginning of this show, the amount of time theft that's possible with a fully global panopticon is terrifying. And it's not a world that any of us want to leave behind. And we have to, fight the good fight and make sure that these systems are designed with freedom, with property rights, with equality, with inclusion at the forefront. And Bitcoin has all of those and has had all of those from day one. Central bank digital currencies are a refinement of the current system of societal control. I mean, you can think about, just very simply, a money that decays over time rapidly, a money that is only able to be used on certain goods and services, a money that is tracked and surveilled at all points, a money that has error codes when you go to spend it on something that's not approved. That's terrifying. That's the most terrifying idea that exists right now. Like, I talk to people sometimes about the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the possibility of nuclear war, and I think that's 20th century thinking, and mutually assured destruction more or less prevents that. This idea is a brand new idea, and it's extremely scary.